Hello and welcome to Business Today. I'm Siddharth Zarabi and we are discussing the India-European Union trade deal, one that's been really in the making for 20 years now, but has finally come through on the 27th of January with the 27-member trading bloc. And joining me now to discuss the import of that is R Mukundan, President Designate of the Confederation of Indian Industry, Chandrajit Banerjee, Director General of CII, Kulin Lalbhai, Executive Director of Arvind Ltd, and Anjali Singh, Executive Chairperson of the Anand Group and Chairperson of the CII Northern Region. Thank you very much for joining us today. I want to begin with you, Chandrajit. We were at Davos when the EU Commissioner really set the cat amongst the pigeons by saying that the mother of all deals was set to be signed. In some ways, that announcement overshadowed what President Trump was going to do. But you'll also recall that President Trump also on the sidelines said that they will soon have a deal with India as well. So minus everything else, that perhaps was one of the biggest headlines from Davos this year. What's your own sense? A deal that has been possible because of Brussels and New Delhi finally deciding that enough was enough, and a message needed to be sent to Washington, Chandrajit?
See, India has been getting into free trade agreements with many major economies in the recent past, if one has seen. And as you mentioned that the EU-India trade talks were on for quite some time, but one point which came out very strongly, as we all heard, is this is going to be the mother of all deals, and both leadership on both sides did echo that very, very strongly. And I think years of negotiation, which went into the depth, which really, it's, when we talk about EU, it is 27 odd countries, and that's a huge number, and 25% of the world GDP between us two, EU and India. And the population, if you see, is it will much more than 2 billion. So this is indeed a mother of all deals, and this is something that we were looking at with India really entering into some of these trade negotiations and trade agreements with many parts of the world, which is mutually beneficial. And this particular one with the EU is really mutually beneficial. India getting a huge amount of access, and of course, the tariff lines that we are seeing on both sides, 96.8 and 92.1 respectively, just is tremendous opportunities for our critical sectors to look at the European market, and for Europe to look at India, and also from the point of view of investments.
Chandrajit, since this is a groundbreaking and historic deal, and the EU calls it the mother of all deals, I wonder if you have a quick comment whether the US deal, as and when it happens, should be called the father of all trade deals.
I hope the US deal happens, and it will happen wherever it happens, but I'm sure that's also going to be eagerly waited, and it should be great and good. And but this one is something that we would look forward really to spark off
absolutely
amount of growth in India.
Viewers, I was being a little informal and it is hyperbole, but it is important to put that in context, because regardless of what has transpired between last January and this January with regard to India-US relations, trade relations also, you can't take away from the fact that the India and US trade relations are extremely significant, particularly for our economy. Mr. Mukundan, I come to you, and very simply, let's try and use the 20-25 minutes on the show, because I have members of industry here, to explain to the lay viewer what it means for India Inc. I've been having other conversations. So that first question to you, have we won more or have we won less through this deal? What is your take on it, Mr. Mukundan?
First, start by complimenting and congratulating both India and EU on this historic trade deal. And it's not just a trade deal, it's a trade, investment, technology, service partnership deal. It's very, very comprehensive. On top of that, there is also defense partnership, which has been signed, a security deal. So I think we've got to look at this as a very holistic approach one of the things I've noticed from at least 3 years ago, and last year it was very, very clear, was a very mature and a structured way which Europe was approaching this whole process, and India was also responding to the same. And last year there was a large delegation of EU which had come to India. So I think this is a culmination of a very, very structured and detailed work which both teams have been doing. And it's not easy, as Chandrajit explained, when you have to carry all your constituents out. And I think this deal brings to fore, firstly, trade and trade opportunity for India. Europe, as you know, is about 5 times the size of Indian market. So I think we get access to a market through one single deal, which is multiple size. The second is we also get access to technology. EU has by far very advanced technologies in many areas which are relevant to us. If you look at just the farm sector, the farm holdings in Europe are also pretty much similar in terms of size, scale, and the issues they face. And I think it's going to be something which can be given as access, even though it's been excluded. But the real issue is that the farm technologies will be available. Sustainability, India and EU have been very, very focused on continuing with the Paris Agreement goals. So I think this allows us flow of technology on that piece. In terms of investments, as we already know, over 6,000 companies are already present in India, and European companies have been long-term investors in India for much longer than many other countries. And I think we would continue to engage more deeply. Now they will deepen the investments in India, not just to serve Indian market, but also serve markets back in Europe and also the third markets like Mercosur and Africa. So opens up a huge approach. In terms of also the service sector, for example, the knowledge economy, this gives us an access to R&D, to our students, to our executives to travel more freely. So even that part is something which is very commendable, very balanced deal. And I think both sides are going to benefit. And especially India is going to benefit a lot with the market access it's getting vis-a-vis its competition. And I think now we will see the Europeans also benefiting from India's competitive position in serving all the markets, including Europe and around the world.
Viewers, that's a take from R Mukundan, the MD and CEO of Tata Chemicals, who is also the President Designate of CII. I'll come to you now, Kulin Lalbhai. In any trade deal, especially those that we have struck in the recent past, and these are with advanced economies, and that is the big difference between the earlier trade deals of 15, 20 years ago. Both sides offer what they are good at exporting, and they agree to import at lower duties what they don't have. That is the basic operating principle of any trade deal, whether it is structured as a formal FTA or a bilateral pact. That is semantics in some ways. In terms of the opportunity that Indian exporters and Indian companies get, which sectors would you identify, including yours perhaps, that stands to benefit?
Yes, so I think the way I would describe this deal is a historic deal, because I think for the first time in history, as India integrated into a major Western consumption economy. Just to put it in context, speaking say for my sector, which is the textile and apparel sector, the EU imports $125 billion. That's slightly even above what the US imports. So you have suddenly got a 0% import duty for all kinds of manufactured goods, textiles and apparel being one of them. But even for footwear, toys, furniture, and you must remember that a lot of these manufacturing sectors are incredibly strong on job creation. So, we are talking about the opportunity to create millions of jobs in a short period of time. And looking at the geopolitical environment today, most of the Western economies are figuring out how to decouple from China. And China still accounts for, say, 30% of the imports for the EU when it comes to apparel and textiles. And the second largest is Bangladesh at 20%. And they have had duty-free access. And India has had an 11% disadvantage to the EU. And we are only at 6%. So imagine if we can triple our exports. We are talking about adding just $15 billion of textile and apparel exports to the EU. And this is just one sector. So I'm just trying to give you an example of how much scale can come in with this deal. And you're very right in pointing out it's a very complementary sort of trade deal. because what the Europeans are looking to sell to India are more lifestyle, high value products. And what India is going to sell are areas where we really excel in very low cost or innovation based manufacturing. So I really feel this is the first of its kind of bringing scale and predictability, because one of the great things about the EU, it's a very set mechanism. So this is going to bring predictability, and predictability is critical for industries on both sides to invest and export and import. So I would again come back to saying this is a once in a time very, very momentous thing, which I think both economies will benefit from massively.
A good point that you made, especially on high value point. And viewers also keep in mind, we have a signed FTA deal, which also has a kind of unique component of the FTA promising to facilitate $100 billion of investment over a few years into India. There are not similar, but there is also a significant amount of money that has been promised under this deal that I was seeing in the fine print that one managed to read from the European side as far as climate is concerned. Since you spoke about high value, that gives me the opportunity to go to Anjali Singh. Anjali, I was waiting to come to you because one, for your initial comment, but more importantly, from your understanding of the automobile sector and how it has evolved over the past 3-4 decades and become a champion of Indian manufacturing and our industrial might, how do you see the promises that have been made and the lower duties for a certain committed number of vehicles? What kind of impact will it possibly have on the ground? Anjali.
Thank you very much. Firstly, my congratulations to both sides on this deal. It is momentous and absolutely historic, as already mentioned. And I think most of all, it really garners and fosters trust and great credibility for India going forward. And as you say, I think giving that strength to the long-term commitment and partnership with the EU, I think will be an incredible strength for us going forward. During this time, especially of great change and flux in the world, I think this consistency is going to really pay out for us in the long run. I think for the automobile sector, there is a lot to look forward to still. Rather than just concentrating on tariffs, I think there is huge amount to be done on exchange on innovation and on R&D and on technology, and also on what I would say is the backbone of any industry, which is the MSMEs. There's a huge potential now. This opens up huge possibilities for the automotive industry as well. And not only that, but it also opens up a huge possibility of investment, both in Europe and vice versa, and more JVs coming together for partnership and technology exchange.
That's a good point. Anjali, one quick follow-up with you, and you kind of put that very well. 30 years ago, if we had done something similar, there would have been loud protests and perhaps valid about whether lower import duties would allow us to develop internal capacities. Over the last 10 years, we have seen exchequer money being put behind Atmanirbharta in various schemes. Do you think automobiles is an example where India can now sit back and say, hey, listen, this sector has achieved a certain maturity and we are okay to free it up to some extent and rather divert our energy and focus and finances, the limited that we have, to supporting other more nascent sectors?
So I think you phrased it very well. Make in India and the Indian automobile industry has, I would say, arrived. It's very mature now, whether we talk of Mahindra or Tata or Maruti or any of us as tier ones or tier twos, we have localized a huge amount of our technologies and our supply chain. And I would just say we're ready to play in the global market. And so really this deal shows an incredible plethora of opportunities for all of us. And I think you're absolutely right. Make in India is something that we've all invested in and we believe hugely in. So I do feel this is the right time for such a trade deal.
Chandrajit, you have traced the arc and evolution of Indian industry and its broader response from the so-called Bombay Club to now. What does this represent? I haven't, unless I have missed it, and I hope some viewers can comment and point it out to me, seen the kind of protests that happened. And I compare this deal with the ASEAN FTA, where some of the negative implications are still being felt by India and certain sectors. Chandrajit, in terms of describing, as a watcher of industry, I ask you to describe this moment over the last 30-40 years in how much we have evolved as a market-facing economy.
So, what's happened is since when we look at the first time when we reformed, Indian industry, as you mentioned, many clubs came up saying that probably we will perish. Yes, there were certain entities which perished and certain entities which couldn't cope up. But there were many which were born, and many new scope both for India and outside of India that emerged, and opportunities evolved, and Indian industry became globally competitive. We became open to global competition. We became more quality conscious. We became strong in terms of technology. We started collaborating with the rest of the world, and we sort of knew that both our small, mid-sized companies as well as large companies in many sectors evolved. And there is something like areas where we are competitive. Those ones and the world moves on comparative advantage. And when we have our own competitiveness being fully sort of exploited, the sectors evolve, the companies evolve, and we have seen that many of our sectors become truly globally competitive. And now, as we have done factor market reforms and we are opening furthermore in terms of really become competitive to the rest of the world in terms of tariffs, in terms of the type of global value chains, the ease of business happening in India, we are seeing not only investments coming into India, we are seeing a stronger middle class, which is bringing in a large demand, which is making itself India so much more. Indian consumers are very conscious, and you and I will buy products which are worthy enough, and we'll look at it and just not buy anything that's put onto us. So all of that has really changed the dimension in which India today is not only poised to become just the third largest economy, but we are also become one of the strongest influencers in terms of how our technologies are, our products, our skills, our manpower can really be beneficial for the rest of the world. Our growth is very inclusive, and,
right.
and when we are opening up through these trade deals, it is letting us, not only our companies take advantage of it, but we are also letting many other companies come in and invest in India and work for the rest of the world.
Before I go to R Mukundan, I noticed some commentary on social media about very high-end cars becoming cheaper, and I must say that while optimism and hope keeps all of us afloat, the fact is that government taxes at the higher end of cars account for more of a hit than just import duties. But we'll leave that for aside. Mr. Mukundan, I want to ask you about the law of unintended consequences. You are a stalwart of Indian industry. When there was a wave of resentment against immigration and H1B, it hasn't happened just now. It's been there for many years now. We saw that GCCs come up in India. I want to ask you, as a consequence of this India-EU FTA, is there some good, positive law of unintended consequences that you feel will work out, something that we haven't dwelt on, which will be beneficial to the country? And I ask you this with the bottom line data fact that there are 6,000 companies from Europe which are already present in India.
Yeah. So I think that's a great point. I would certainly say that many of these companies already have experience of India, experience of Indian talent going and working in their companies and in leadership position. So that pace is going to accelerate further. I think what India brings to the table is scale in talent, scale and absorption of design and technology, and to serve the world in a very, very competitive manner. So I think these companies are going to discover that India provides a solid base for them to build, not just for Indian market, but India and beyond. That has been seen by companies which came out of our Japanese FTA, that has been seen by our the Korean FTA. So we have benefited wherever we have gone along and signed with a more advanced, more developed country. And I think those relationships have flourished and have enabled India to become more competitive, Indian companies to become more competitive. So GCC is only one example of this. I think this is going to expand the kind of markets we can relate to, where we can sell to. I think as we comply with the EU standards in terms of servicing the customers in EU, we will be able to compete with the best in the world. And whether it be pharma, whether it be biotech, whether it be chemicals, whether it be machinery, whether it be industrial goods, I think all these are going to benefit from the inputs we're going to get from our partnership with EU and EU companies. And many of these EU companies did not have the scale. With Indian market access, they get the scale, and that brings them competitiveness to compete with the biggest and the best in the world. So I think this is really coming together of a very complementary kind of access together to serve the world market. So I would think it's much more comprehensive. And if you see what has also happened in the deal on the defense, many of the companies are actually setting up assembly shops in India. They are setting up design shops in India. And this experience will enable us to build for future, to build the next level of technology here. And really, we should be looking forward to acceleration going forward.
One quick follow-up, Mukundan, about the bureaucracy and the regulatory state that the EU is. I am not saying this. The German leader said this, and he said it again at Davos, because that's very recent. Is there any fear or anything that we should feel in terms of concern with regard to Indian companies, despite the FTA running into the famous or infamous European bureaucracy and over-regulated state?
I think many countries around the world are realizing, including EU, that they need to make the ease of doing business much better for everyone. I think that realization has come in EU, that realization has come in India, and I think both the regions are actually accelerating to make the environment much more amenable to easy business relationship, easy business establishment, easy business running. And I think we can only learn from each other. I think one thing which EU does bring to table is everything is run by rules. So you're not going to get surprises along the way. And clearly there is an opportunity for all of us to make our environments much more easy to do business in. I think that realization is there everywhere. And coming from India, navigating what we have seen over the last 30 years of business, where things have improved, I think we also are in a good position to sort of advise our partners in EU what works and what doesn't work. I think we're going to mutually learn from each other and make businesses flourish on both sides.
And viewers, even as I ask this question of the EU, one must be conscious and admit that retrospective amendments were till recently an Indian speciality. So, the Europeans also would be looking at concern with regard to India. And Chandrababu Naidu recently told me that it's no longer about ease of doing business, it should also be about speed of doing business. I come to you, Kunil, and you understand the labor market because your sector is dominated by labor. In all deals in the recent past, we spend a lot of time, and sometimes it also becomes a hurdle, which is service sector mobility, labor mobility. And perhaps given our needs and that we are also an exporter of human capital, we want easier access in overseas markets to our working professionals. Is that such a big deal really? Because at a time when opportunities in India abound. In the IT sector, we are seeing a return of many people. Is that a significant issue, and there is a component of that in this deal as well, or should we now look beyond that, just as we are looking beyond that in sectors like automobile?
So I'm not the expert in at least the IT service sector and some of the challenges they must be or might be facing. But I think when a deal like this gets signed, and I think once you start integrating supply chains much more deeply, what will tend to happen is that the people-to-people connect will automatically be going up significantly. And I think for normal sort of work visas on both sides, I mean, at least in our industries, we have never seen a challenge of any sort. And as Mukundan was saying, I think the other piece which will come hand in hand will be a further acceleration of things like GCC. In most industries, India is now, in a sense, emerging not as a low-end service partner, but more and more higher-level services are moving to India. Say, for example, even in the different industries we operate, the GCCs in India today are getting into things like AI and transformation. So I think whether it is exchange of people to facilitate goods trade or service trade, I think once the two, in a sense, continents come closer to one another, and as the people-to-people connects improve, I'm sure these small irritants may be there in certain sectors, but on the whole, I don't see that as becoming a deterrent at all.
Okay, that's a good point. Anjali Singh, the final question on the show to you. And I want to ask you, let's say we were to talk in 15 days' time, after the US deal has been announced, taken together, what would your response be? A moment as historic and as momentous as the beginning of economic reforms in 1991? Who would have imagined all of this happening and happening in this manner?
Sorry, your voice was breaking up a little bit there, and I certainly don't have a glass bowl, and neither am I a future teller. But I would just like to say, I think, everyone here has already emphasized how important this deal is, and how India, I think, today can just hope to become a player in the world, and has emerged as a player in the world with all of these trade deals, where we are really not only a force to reckon with, but we can see how each one of these have strengthened us as a trading partner, as an export partner, as a technology partner, and more so as a real emerging market to reckon with. So I would just say, I think we're in historic times here.
Absolutely. Chandrajit, I noticed you there. You want to have the very last word on the show?
No, I would only say that yes, it does remind us of the historic occasion of 1991, as you rightly said. This is something which will really help us integrate much stronger with the rest of the world. It gives an opportunity to integrate our companies which are today globally competitive, much more deeply with the rest of the world through Europe. And I think one question you asked, which was very, very pertinent, and during the visit, we saw an agreement on mobility partnership between the India and, of course, the EU. And this will really create a huge amount of opportunity besides our companies, new mobility pathways for skilled Indian workforce to engage with the EU. So that will add to this the strength that and I think this is really a historic opportunity for our companies, and even the agreement or the understanding of our companies, yes, that the moment has arrived for us to seize the world is something really going to be historic.
Absolutely. Viewers, there's an old saying which basically means that sometimes nothing moves for years, and then years move in minutes. And I think that's what's really happened. And this deal could have been done much earlier. There were occasions when we came very near, but perhaps the changed geopolitical circumstances have brought Brussels and New Delhi together. And to some extent, I think we have to say and thank the President of the United States for ensuring that business has trumped politics. Chandrajit Banerjee, Anjali Singh, R Mukundan and Kulin Lalbhai, thank you very much for your time with us today. With that, it's a wrap on this show. We'll keep coming back with more voices on the response to this India-EU trade deal announcement. Do stay tuned in. Until we see you again, goodbye.